Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History Spiritual Quest. We're in chapter 10 of the book of John, and then we're going to be moving into chapter 10 of the Impersonal Life. Elvis loved both of these books, and in the Impersonal Life, he made many annotations, and he handed copies of that book to others. He also made annotations in a book called The Prophet. And we're going to look at some of those today as soon as we come back from this song, Word on Fire. Thank you for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And today we're going to get started by looking at yet another annotation that Elvis himself made in a book. This one is The Prophet. And here we can see the pages that Elvis wrote on. On one page is blank, and it has nothing but Elvis's annotation. And on the other page, he's underlined pieces, and he's written another annotation at the bottom. So let's read what Elvis has written on the left page, the blank one. It says, I deny you have positive shield of defense. And he has underlined positive. He has underlined defense. I deny you have positive shield of defense. I think he might have misspelled shield. I'm always bad at that I and E myself, but I think that indicates to us he wrote this in the moment. Spelling's not important. Punctuation's not important. Grammar is not important. What is important is that he gets the idea that he's seeing in the page onto the paper so that he can remember it later when he comes back to look again at this page, or so that he can craft the ideas in his mind. Now, what does this mean? I deny you have positive shield of defense. I have absolutely no idea. I can't think of anything we've read that talks about a positive or a negative shield of defense, or what he'd be defending from. But whatever it is, he denies it. So this is not something he agrees with. So we will have to look and see if it's on this other page, but we'll also have to bear this one in mind as we continue to look through the other books. What is he talking about? I also wonder, again, who is this book for? Is this book directly out of Elvis's library? Because we don't know. We just know that it got auctioned. Is it a gift that he gave to someone else? Are these messages that are meant for someone, or are they simply his own thoughts as he writes? Well, we don't know. So we've got to kind of hold all those possibilities in our hands as we walk through. The same way that we have to hold all the possible interpretations of the text. Because the text is multi-layered and it is saying all of these different things. And Jen says she's going to have to think about that statement. And Deborah says Elvis really liked this book. So, of course, what I am saying is only my opinion and thoughts. So, if you think about this statement, you have your own ideas, be sure to put them into the chat, put them into the comments. Be sure that you hit the like button and that you subscribe so that you can join us, so that we can look at more of these annotations by Elvis. And if you do know what he's saying, please enlighten the rest of us. Now let's read the actual page, and he did not underline the beginning of this page, which says, Then one of the judges of the city stood forth and said, Speak to us of crime and punishment. And he answered, saying, It is when your spirit goes wandering upon the wind. So that is the punishment. Or is that the crime? I don't know. It's one or the other. The spirit goes wandering upon the wind. It's either a crime or a punishment. And that you alone and unguarded commit a wrong unto others, and therefore unto yourself. Now, Elvis has underlined commit a wrong and therefore unto yourself, which is saying that when we do wrong to others, we also hurt ourselves. That this is a message about unity that we've heard from Joseph Benner in the Impersonal Life. Joseph tells us that everything is one. That is the true state of being. That there are no differences between us and others. We are all cells of God, of God's body. That the differentiation that we see is perspective here on earth, but that all is in fact love. And therefore, when you hurt another, you are hurting the love that is yourself. And this resonates with Elvis because he's underlined this section. So now let's think again about it is when your spirit goes wandering upon the wind. We're speaking about crime and punishment. This is speaking about alignment. Joseph Benner has told us that alignment is the key to salvation. That it's not about whether you believe, it's that you are facing in the direction of your belief. Now, Jesus says that you have to believe in him, which is also a way of saying you must face him. You can't turn away. You have to acknowledge his presence. Joseph Benner says that the I am, who is God, lives in your heart, and you have a direct line of communication all the time. And the times that we're not able to communicate is because we've tuned our radio to the wrong channel. That there is interference from our life that's pushing us into misalignment. And we could think about alignment as a compass. North is Jesus, south is misalignment. North is unity, south is solitude. The further you get away from God, the more lonely you are, because you are in complete solitude, unable to recognize the love which you receive and unable to pass it onward. That is when your spirit goes wandering upon the wind. It is alone, in solitude. That is both the crime and the punishment. It's not a punishment from God. It's a choice that you have made, and it's you punishing yourself because you do not feel worthy of love. And that's what it is when your spirit goes wandering upon the wind. Hi, Carolyn. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Hi, David. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Jen says that being aligned with your truth always can lead you in the right direction, but what if your truth isn't always doing good? I think this is a question about faith. If you are orientated in the right direction, the illumination that Jesus provides will not allow you to follow a false truth. That if you are following a false truth, that is interference. It's a more subtle form of interference. It's one that you have to use more discernment for, which I believe Joseph Benner and Jesus have already told us they have given us. People are able to look at Jesus and recognize in the Bible that he is the Christ, even when they are not Jewish. So the illumination that comes from the I am will burn away the fog. But the fog will continue to come in, and that is why Peter, when he walks towards Jesus on the water, thinks. The fog closes in, he remains facing God, and he cries out for help. Now, Peter cried out for help. Other people cry out curses. They curse God for allowing them to sink. Or they scream out their pain. It doesn't matter what you yell at God. What matters is that you are facing him and that your communication is to him. As Jesus has already told us, your actual opinions of Jesus don't affect him in the way that it does the ego of a mortal man. He's large enough to take it. Most people, though, they feel that they are unworthy of the love that Jesus sends, and they turn away in shame and they scream their obscenities and their other thoughts into the wind, which is where their spirit is wandering. Hi, TT, ASMR. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And let's just read what Elvis has underlined again, that you alone and unguarded. So he didn't underline that part, but alone and unguarded, that is solitude, where you are unable to recognize the love that you receive, and that leaves you defenseless, unguarded. Your heart is open to the world and able to be wounded, which is what I think if you see people that you believe are misaligned, they are often wounded. And Elvis has underlined, commit a wrong unto others and therefore unto yourself. This is the misaligned who recognize that they're not receiving this love, that they're receiving it. They just don't recognize it. They are in pain, in solitude, and they wish others to be in pain and solitude with them, even though they cannot share their solitude. So they broadcast interference with the I am in their local area. And that is what wounds these others. That's the wrong that is done unto the others. And the next section says, and for that wrong committed must you knock and wait a while unheeded at the gate of the blessed. Now, Elvis hasn't underlined this because it doesn't resonate with him in this moment. But this is talking about damnation. When you commit a wrong that forces you further away from God, and remember, there is no true distance, it's an illusionary distance, illusory. It's a self-delusion of yourself that you are moving away from God, but that doesn't make the distance any less real for you. You perceive the distance, and with every wrong you commit, you force that distance to be more. And at some point, the veils of what you have done will be fully lifted, and you will recognize in totality what you have done to another. And there is a consequence and a price to be paid for that. And that price is that it will drive you further from divinity. You will feel more shame. It's self-imposed. You can still turn around. You can still receive forgiveness, but it's like being buried alive. The more that you've done, the more it weighs upon you, and the harder it is to dig your way back out. That's the way that it feels. It's truly just turning around, but it feels like you can't find your way back to God. That's you knocking and feeling unheeded at the gate of the blessed. And the next line says, like the ocean is your God self. And Elvis has underlined your God self. I think God self is the way that this book is describing the soul body, or perhaps the divine shard itself. Joseph Benner uses the term soul body as a construct of perfection that wraps around the splinter of God, the divine that is you, that is your soul. So it's a container for your soul here on earth, that either it's the soul or the soul body or the combination of the two that is being referred to, I think, as your God self. And TT's ASMR is asking, did Elvis actually write in this book? Yes, this is his writing. This is his underlining. This is his characteristic capitalization in the letters. This particular book has many pages that he's written on. Now, can I absolutely guarantee it's Elvis's writing? Well, obviously I can't do that. But somebody paid a lot of money believing that it was, and it had some kind of provenance with it that came with it, but we just didn't get to see that provenance, and they didn't describe it to us. That's why we don't know who had this book. Carolyn says there's a channel that has Elvis ASMR. I have a playlist saved on my channel. It's pretty good, actually. And TT says, wow, how cool. And if you like ASMR, I highly encourage you to check out TT's channel. She's all about the sounds. A lot of the ASMR channels, they drift into other entertainment experiences. But TT is very focused on the sounds, and I really like it. Also, check out Carolyn's channel. Carolyn Loves Elvis Forever. Puts out a lot of good Elvis videos. And then back to this text. It says, like the ocean is your God self, it remains forever undefiled. They got to wonder exactly when this book was written, because in today's world, I don't think any of us would refer to the ocean as undefiled. In fact, I believe there are giant islands of garbage that are floating all over the ocean. And it's quite a problem. The ocean's really, really big, but we have managed to defile pieces of it, portions of it. But back then, it may have really seemed as if it never could be defiled. And therefore, it would resonate with your soul, which cannot be in any way corrupted. Your mortal self can be corrupted, and your soul will end up paying the consequences, which is the distance from Jesus that your mortal self incurs. And that's why you're supposed to be using your soul to guide your mortal self, not supposed to be letting your mortal self run rampant all on its own. And Carolyn says that I don't have to do that. Well, I enjoy it, Carolyn. I enjoy the fact that we have a community of channels and that we all find some kind of joy in each other. And this says, and like the ether, it lifts but the winged, even like the sun is your God self. It knows not the ways of the mole, nor seeks the holes of the serpent. But your God self dwells not alone in your being. Much in you is still man, and much in you is not yet man. And so this is saying that your soul is the light of your life. It is the sunlight that illuminates your path. That your soul is the lantern of faith that I have been describing in previous broadcasts. And when it refers to the ether lifts the wings, and it's talking like of a butterfly, that means hot air. There's warmth that comes from the sun, and it's warming the air, and it's lifting these winged creatures. And that's what your soul does for you. It helps you float through your life by never being corruptible, never being defiled, always being a place you can go back to for complete innocence and communication with God. It could be that the God self is the I am in your heart that Joseph Benner refers to. It's just that here in the prophet, it's being referenced in a different way. And then it says, it knows not the ways of the mole, nor seeks it like the holes of the serpent. But your God self dwells not alone in your being. I think there are multiple meanings here, and Elvis is underlying God's self dwells and in your being. And so, because the I am is in your heart, everyone is in your heart. You're not alone. And you don't just have God, you have everyone, because everyone is love. But you're also not alone in the sense that your soul is encased in your mortal self. So you have two parts to yourself. The secular portion, which helps you survive here on earth, and your soul. So I think it's also saying that. It's giving that division, although Joseph Benner makes that division more, he makes it more visual. He tells you exactly that the division is there. Here it's being kind of wrapped into the thoughts of ourself as a whole. And then it says, much in you is still man, and much in you is not yet man. I think that's another reference to secular self, man, and that of you, that which is not man, that's your soul. That's the portion of you that is directly from the divine. That's the part that doesn't truly belong here on earth. It belongs in unity, in the divine now, that place where all space, time, presence, thought, it's all wrapped together into a single divine now. There's no past, there's no present. And then Elvis has written, you are not isolated in your God self, which we could interpret as you are not alone in your soul. You are not alone in your heart when you talk to God. You are never alone. Love is always with you. These are all different ways to say what Elvis has written here. You are not isolated in your God self. So let's take a look. This is my equations at a glance, where I've taken the impersonal life and I've tried to distill it into some verbal equations that we can use as we walk through these different books and we try to find the resonance that Elvis saw. And so I'm just looking to see one that resonates with the text that we just read. And let's look at 5 down in the left column. It says divine creations with free will equal divine shards. Now, those are words that I've made up. They're not directly from any of the books, but it's the way that I'm thinking that they're expressing that we are pieces of the divine. So, like a crystal, we are a shard of the divine. It could be a splinter. I just like the word shard more. So we are divine shards, and we equal expressions of love. This is from Benner. We are here to express something about the divine. Ultimately, all expressions from the divine are love, because God is love. We see that in an equation above that. I am God equals love. And that's one of the other things the equations allow you to do, is that they allow you to replace the words that are in some of the pieces that we'll look at, as well as in these equations themselves, and you still have the same meaning. And we see that with I am God equals love, and then below it, I am God equals all time, space, place, presence, love in all things. Just another way of saying the same equation. And I think David's asking, where are the books that Elvis had? Where is that book now? That book that we just looked at is bought by somebody on the auction circuit. Some private collector owns it. I don't know where that particular copy came from. It doesn't have any provenance with it. A lot of those pieces, though, they were sold at Graceland auctions in a period before things made it onto the internet or onto pages on the internet that have been gone for 20 years or more. You know, that a lot of these auctions started in the late 90s from Graceland itself, early 2000s. There were some before that, there was a huge MGM auction. But that's how some of these pieces get out there, and they no longer have any provenance connected to them, because the provenance is that they were sold at these previous auctions. And you'll end up getting that when you buy it, but it's not enough provenance for them to list as a description of the items. And in other cases, they're sold by auction houses that are just not good at putting out description. Like, I don't know. I am not in the auction business. And as with all businesses that I end up looking at in any way, I have some kind of criticisms of them, but I don't work in that business, so I don't really know. And Carolyn says, wow, that book should be with Elvis's grandchildren, and that's sad. Well, I don't know, Carolyn, because we were looking at a copy of The Impersonal Life earlier that had belonged to Ginger Alden. She sold it. I mean, so what matters is that the book and the writing be important to who own them. And apparently, when they're being auctioned off, I can't really state that they are important to that person. Hi, Lorna. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Now, I could be wrong. I mean, I don't want to judge anything that Ginger has done. Maybe she needed the money. Maybe the whole thing just didn't resonate with her. Maybe she felt like she'd held it long enough. Maybe she felt those messages needed to make it out to somebody else. I don't know, but what I do know is at some point, these books were no longer treasured by who had them enough to keep them. And David says that fans should see it in a museum. Well, that's another interesting point, but where is a museum that fans would see this in? There's really only one, and that's Graceland. There's been a lot of Elvis museums, but they're all gone. Now, there's a few more now, but they'll be gone too. No one's able to keep these Elvis museums running. They just can't do it. Now, I hope that the spa guy can keep that dojo running for a while, but it's already shut down once. Graceland itself is somehow incredibly unique. And it's not something that anyone else can copy and keep running. Dr. Nick had a traveling Elvis museum, but it didn't last. Carolyn says that's a good point. It's all right as long as they're taking care of it. And Deborah says that Elvis also bought and gave copies of his books to his friends. That's true too. So it's possible this book came through somebody, and whoever that wasn't enough of a name or a known connection to Elvis to mention them as the provenance. Carolyn says that these books are a treasure. Let's flip on over from the books back to chapter 10 of the book of John, although this is yet another story that's not in John. This is one that's from the Gospels. It's in the chronological time period. It's being told to us by a comic book. And this says, Jesus heals a dumb man, and the people are amazed. Now, this comic book was printed in 1942. So some of the language that they use is not the language we use today. And the language is reflective of the language that was in the King James Version of the Bible, which is the version Elvis grew up with and he would have read the most. So this word dumb, I mean, it actually would have appeared to Elvis. This is the way he would have read it. And today we would read that and think, dumb man, well, this man is stupid. And he's healed his intelligence. But that is not what this comic is saying. And a child back in the 1940s would not have made that error. He would have known that dumb means that the man cannot speak. It probably means he's deaf. Often, dumb and deaf are associated together because if you can't hear yourself speak, it's very difficult to speak. And it says the people are amazed. There's a miracle that's been performed here. If Elvis saw this as a child, I think he would have immediately thought of his Uncle Tracy, Gladys's brother, his mother's brother, who was dumb and deaf. Tracy had an illness as a child that caused him to go deaf. It also affected his mental outlook on the world in the sense that some people might have called him simple back in the day. Again, we've changed our language quite a bit. And so I prefer to think that Tracy saw the world in a more innocent and less complex manner than many people did. And he did speak, but he was very difficult to understand. And I don't know how much, if anything, he could hear. We're not really sure of the state of his deafness, but obviously he couldn't hear much. And so here is a man with his Uncle Tracy's disabilities being healed by Jesus as a miracle. And Elvis may have wondered, we're Christian, why can't Uncle Tracy be healed? I kind of think he would, because even as a child, I believe Elvis was very compassionate. And in the next panel, it says, some say he does this through the power of the devil. Others ask for a sign. So we see a group of men talking. There's 4 of them. And they're looking at the people that are grouped around Jesus, who are listening to him. Now, these men appear to be dressed very well. They've got under tunics, they've got robes over them, they've got belts around the robes. One of them has a lot of fringe, which is obviously a decorative touch. They're wearing headdresses that are specifically made to be headdresses. They don't look like they've wrapped spare pieces of fabric around their head, although these are long flowing pieces of fabric that create the headdresses. One of them has a money pouch. It's some kind of leather pouch, probably has money in it. If we look over at Jesus, his attention is on the people he's talking to. And there is a young boy that Elvis might have noticed, but his back is to us. But the other thing Elvis would have noticed, I'm almost sure, especially as a child, is there is a dog next to Jesus. Now, we're looking at the dog from the back, but why is there a dog in this comic book sitting next to Jesus? That's something the artist has put in there, and it's something that definitely would have appealed to children who were the target of the audience. You know, that's who this particular book's being made for. And in the next panel, it says, a kingdom divided itself cannot stand. Why would the devil cast out devils? And then he says, there shall be no sign given except the sign of Jonah. Let's go back to the previous panel. It says, some people are saying he can only do this because he has the power of the devil. Can't be from the power of God. And others are saying, I don't know, but couldn't he just make this clear with a sign? And Jesus answers both questions. A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. Now, I think that's also a reference to your internal self, like we just saw in the other book. You are not alone with your God self or your God soul, however that book put that wording. Or as Joseph Benner would say, you're not alone with the I am in your heart. There's two of you. There's your soul and there's your mortal self. And when you're divided against each other, as in your mortal self is not aligned and listening with your soul, then you cannot stand. You're misaligned. You are headed south. And then Jesus asked this question: why would the devil cast out devils? That would be a kingdom dividing itself. The devil's not here to cast devils out of people, it's here to put them into people. Now, he's not speaking to the truth of whether there is or is not a devil. He's just saying, I'm using your logic in this argument, and it doesn't make any sense. And then he says, there shall be no sign given, except the sign of Jonah. Now, Jonah got swallowed by a whale. And I don't think he got out, well, a big fish. I think the Bible says a big fish. And he doesn't get out of the big fish until he believes in God, if I remember the story correctly. So I'm not sure exactly what Jesus is saying, except that you might feel like you've been swallowed by a giant fish until you finally align. Because inside a fish, you're all alone by yourself. You're unable to receive and transmit love. But when you turn around and you are aligned, you won't be inside a fish. So the sign is really the light that Jesus is giving that allows you to find your path and reorientate to alignment. But he's not going to give a specific sign. There is no sign that will spark your faith. Faith doesn't come that way. That there is no proof of miracles. There's simply the miracle. And Deborah says that Elvis wrote in the margins and underlined things in all his books. Carolyn says that she treasures the Elvis book Between the Lines, and it's just a copy of his writing. Between the Lines. Yeah, and what I don't particularly like about that, what I do like about that book is you get to see Elvis's writing. And so at the time it was published, I think it was a great idea. What I don't like about that book is we don't get to see the whole book, right? Like we don't get to see the rest of what's in the book. And it doesn't really explain what Elvis was doing when he was writing or what he pulled from it. But it is a fabulous book to see his writing. And Deborah says that Priscilla made Elvis burn some books for sure. Larry kind of indicates that there's two stories here, where Elvis once told him he caved in and burned books Priscilla wanted. And at another time, Elvis told him he only burned books he didn't like himself. So I'm not sure about the two. We really got to get into that part more about what did happen with the burning. Priscilla tells the story, but the timeline is not correct. And that's why I haven't told it yet. Because it's not where she said it was, because we went through that timeline and it doesn't fit in. The other thing I want to look at in this panel is, well, the bright and colorful clothing of all the people. It's pretty amazing. There's a lot of detail in it. Elvis was very fashion oriented. He loved clothes. I don't know when that love started, but as a child, maybe this is part of what sparked it. Again, I don't know that Elvis ever saw this particular comic book. I just know it was printed when he was a child, and it's the kind of book people would have kept around. Comic books were often purged and thrown out in the trash, but this would have been one of those that the adult doing the purging would have kept around. This was a good influence. Let's look at those buildings in the background. 2-story, stone. They got flat roofs. This is a construction unseen to Elvis before. This is not Tupelo. This doesn't look like anything in Memphis. He occasionally gets to go to Memphis as a child. They go to the zoo. His Uncle Noah drives him in a bus along with a bunch of other kids and families and parents. So Elvis, Vernon, Gladys, they do go to the zoo in Memphis. And I would imagine he's doing that around age 7, 8, 9, 10. Probably does it about once a year, maybe a couple of times. Don't really know. If you go to the Memphis Zoo today, I'm told, and I've seen them, I don't know if it's really true, that the benches that are all over the place that you can sit on, they're the same benches that were there when Elvis went as a child. Which that's pretty amazing in and of itself, true. But look at these windows. And some of the windows have some kind of grill covering or design in them. And Deborah says that she thinks Elvis may have picked out the books he burned and Priscilla wouldn't take time to go through them. She wouldn't just not take the time. She wouldn't know which one. She would have just grabbed them up by the handfuls. But I'm thinking Elvis had a collection of books he didn't like and said, hey, let's burn these, because she was all over him about it. She says they burned them in a well or something outside of Graceland, but in the timeline, they were in California. So again, I'm not sure the truth to this story or her memories. She has memories that they did this. It's just that they're not in the right place. In this particular panel, it says, as he speaks, a Pharisee asked Jesus to eat with him. Now, in this particular panel, you can see Jesus and the Pharisee. And the Pharisee has this look on his face. And it's not a pleasant look. It's like he's setting a trap and he's saying, Jesus, you want to come eat at my house? And it's almost like he's poisoned the meal and he knows it's poisoned and he's luring Jesus to it. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening here in the story. I'm just pointing to how the artist has illustrated this man's face. And the fact that the artist could get those emotions into this man's face with the lines of a pen, I mean, it's pretty incredible, really. And the ability for an artist to communicate with us in this fashion with no words, well, that is a reflection of the word. As Joseph Benner has been telling us, that there are all these different ways to express divine attributes. And I think what we're seeing in the panels of this comic book are the expression of one artist's divine attributes. In this next picture, it says the Pharisee wonders that he, being Jesus, does not observe the washing ritual. So they've come to eat. You can see they're all laying down to eat. We've seen this before in the comic where they're all laying down to eat, which is kind of a Roman thing from the time. I'm not really sure where this came from for the Jewish people. I think it might have been tied to the fact that they were nomadic at one point and they would have had virtually no furniture, so you would have sat on the ground to eat. But when we look at Japanese culture, where they often sit on the ground even today to eat, they don't lie on the ground. At some point, they started building these couches. And in this picture, they just look like boxes. I don't know what they would have really looked like. I did participate in Latin club when I was in high school, and we made some of these Roman pieces of furniture that you laid on, and they didn't look anything like this, really. And we did have some dinners where we laid on them and then ate as the Romans would have eaten. Um, so that was an interesting experience, but I would not normally enjoy eating lying down. So this is a whole cultural thing. And Elvis would not have been familiar with this either, as an adult or as a child. But they're talking about a washing ritual. So obviously they do something to prepare for the meal. They're washed in some way. I think a servant washes their feet and maybe brings them a bowl for their hands, something like that. And Jesus didn't participate in this ritual for some reason. And Jesus says, "You Pharisees wash the outside of the cup, but inwardly you are full of wickedness." So it appears that they're drinking probably wine, and that before you pour the wine into your cup, you do some kind of cleaning ritual on it. Now, when we think today about washing dishes, we got sinks, we got running water, we got dish soap, we got dishwashers, we got drying racks, we got cupboards that we keep our clean plates and dishes in so they don't get dirty. Where did they store these cups? Maybe they were on the table all the time. How did they wash them? There was no Dawn dish detergent back then. They did not have sinks with running water. Why would you need a sink? You didn't have any running water. You would have maybe had a tub you filled with water, but that means you would have had to wash that tub pretty well too. Otherwise, every time you put the water in it, it's going to, so how did they wash dishes back in the day? Something that seems really simple, right? But we have no idea. I don't think any of us can guess how they washed their dishes back then. I think they might have used vinegar in some way. Some people do that today who don't have access to water. You can wipe your dishes down with vinegar and it will sanitize them. And if you have wine, you have vinegar. Maybe they're wiping the inside out with vinegar. I don't know what the actual ritual is, but there's some ritual here. Of course, Elvis, as a kid, none of the kids who read this magazine would have known that. And I doubt many of the adults who read the actual Bible have ever thought about, how do they wash these cups? What is he talking about? But it says, inwardly, you are full of wickedness, but you've washed the outside of the cup, not the interior. That's another interesting piece, too. Jesus is saying they wash the outside of the cup. I think you and I would both say, why wash the outside at all? Like, what's the difference on the outside? The important part's the inside. That's where your liquid's going to touch. Now, the outside, your lips are going to touch if you bring it to your mouth. So that's why you want to clean that outside. But I don't think any of us would be happy with a cup that's washed either on the outside or the inside, but not both. And then Jesus says, your tithe, but pass over judgment and the love of God. So the ritual pays tribute in some way to something. That's what most rituals do. They pay a tribute in some way and they prepare your mind for what's coming next. In this case, maybe thanks to God for the food. And that's something that's often a ritual today. And it would prepare your mind to be ready to eat, to drink. You're just preparing for the meal. That's a tithe. A tithe is it's like an offering that you make at church. Usually it's about money. But in this case, I think it's respect. But they pass over judgment and the love of God. And so they only look at the outside of the cup and they don't consider the interior. They only look at the outside of a person and they don't think about what's going on inside. They're only seeing the outward reflections, the action. Now, a lot of us would say words are cheap and it's actions are where it's at, right? But Jesus is pointing out that actions alone cannot be used to judge the inner life of a person. I believe that's what's being said here. Again, I can be wrong. So feel free to put what you think into the chats and into the comments. And let's look at this final panel. This will be all we have time for today. Jesus says, "You load men with burdens too great to bear, and do not help them with one finger." Now, he appears to be talking directly to a female. And I think he's talking to the female, but it's unclear the way this comic does the wording. There's no bubbles to tell us who's actually speaking. Maybe this woman's saying this to him. "You load men with burdens too great to bear and do not help them one finger." And you could see she's got her hand out. She's pointing at herself, and she might be indicating the women are doing all the work here. We saw that in the previous story where Mary's sister, Martha, was very upset that she was doing all the physical work. And we've heard this reflected in some of Elvis's family who feel that they've done the work and they were not rewarded either. Although this is less about reward and more about burdens. But what we're actually going to do here is flip back to the previous panel, because this is where we're going to start. When we come back tomorrow, we get into this whole story and understand what's going on in that next panel. And until then, I'm going to leave you all with a song, like I always do. And this one will be "Glass Slippers He Left Behind," about the love that Ginger Alden felt gone from the world when Elvis passed away. And thank you all so much for spending your time here with me today. I greatly appreciate all of your thoughts and comments and all those likes that you hit. YouTube really likes them too. And so until I see you all again, you all keep on taking care of business.
I was sitting by your side in Lisa's room with your hand in mine when you whispered of December in a church you'd already seen. You spoke of rosebuds on my dress, gold sparks shining when I turned, and I felt like a storybook princess in a world I'd finally earned. You said you'd tell the world in Memphis, 2 weeks and you'd say my name. Talk to children in the quiet like a candle's gentle flame. But the morning stole you from me like a breath that slipped away, and the plans we made together all dissolved in a single day. Oh love, I'm walking through the shadows with the glass slippers you left behind. I'll reach for you in the silence, but only memory answers mine. A part of me went with you where the spirit and the body meet, and I'm learning how to live again with one heart broken, one still beating at your feet. You said life and death were woven, 2 threads in the same design, but I shook as I knelt beside you, calling your name like it still was mine. Lisa cried and ran from the doorway, her world falling like shattered glass, and I held the ache inside me as the moment turned and passed. You always said that love was light, a spark God placed in every soul. Now I search for it in the darkness, trying to trust what I can't control. If distance closes in the ending, then maybe you're not far at all. Maybe you're just in the quiet where the spirit hears the call. Oh love, I'm walking through the shadows with the glass slippers you left behind. I reach for you in the silence, but only memory answers mine. A part of me went with you where the spirit and the body meet, and I'm learning how to live again with one heart broken, one still beating at your feet. I'll keep the dreams you gave me, no one can take them away. And I'll carry your light inside me till we meet again someday. For love is stronger than sorrow, and faith is stronger than fear. And I feel you still beside me, soft as a whisper in my